Good evening. It's now 6:30 and I'd like to call this meeting of the Community Development Committee to order. While this meeting is being held in person, we are also offering the option for the public to participate through Zoom if preferred. Instructions on how to attend virtually are included in the City Council calendar item listed on the front page of the missionkansas.org. The public is also invited to participate in the meeting. If you are participating through Zoom, please either add your comment in the chat feature and it will be read out loud, or note that you would like to speak and we will call on you shortly to make your comment verbally. Please remember your comments or questions are visible to everyone in the meeting. If you're a part of our in-person group tonight, please raise your hand but stay seated and we will call on you to go to the lectern and make your comments. When you make your comment, please state your name and city of residence for the record. Also, be conscientious of others trying to speak and speak clearly and slowly. This meeting will be recorded and posted on the city's website at missionkansas.org. Please contact the administration offices at 913-676-8350 with any questions or concerns. Ms. Fulks, please call the roll.
Vaughn.
Here.
Loudon. Here. Ryard.
Here.
Kring. Here. Josie.
Here.
Carpenter Davis.
Here. Public comments. Our first item of business tonight is public comment. Is there any member of the public who would like to comment now on an item not on our agenda tonight? Please note public comments are limited to 3 minutes. Not seeing anyone. We'll talk about the Planning Commission action items. We do not have any items coming from the Planning and Commission or public presentations tonight. Therefore, we will move to our action items. Our first action item this evening is for the acceptance of the meeting minutes from Robin Fulks.
Thank you. Draft minutes of the October 8th Community Development Committee meeting are included for review and acceptance in your packet tonight.
Questions?
Recommend consent.
Great, thank you. Our second action item this evening is for the approval of a vacation of a private sanitary sewer easement at 5935 Beverly from Brian Scott.
Sticky notes on the computer.
Anyway, gets things done. Yeah.
My staff colleagues will laugh, but I'm actually trying to reduce paperwork. Paper. If you saw my office, you would think otherwise. Okay.
Good prank.
So the two items on the agenda tonight are both vacation of easements. So I'm just gonna kind of take them as one item and explain to you what is occurring here. If you want to go ahead and advance to the next slide. That's the Mission Beverly project. So it's a 260 unit apartment building that's proposed to be built basically at Martway between Dearborn and Beverly on both sides of Martway. So building A is going to be on the north side of Martway. That'll be the larger building. Then building B will be on the south side of Martway, and that'll be a little bit of a smaller building, 3 stories tall, 40 units. Millhouse is the developer, and much like any development company does, whether it's EPC or Sunflower, when they start a project, they'll create an LLC just for that particular project. So the LLC for this particular project is Mission Beverly LLC, very original. So Devin Coffey, the developer that we've spoken with several times, she actually works for Millhouse, but she's kind of working on this project, Mission Beverly LLC. And Millhouse has attorneys on staff, and they actually have their own construction team. All those folks are going to be working on this project. So they have been kind of diligently working through the fine details of the project. So if you want to go to the next slide. The project will entail 8 parcels total. So like I said, there's going to be 5 parcels, a larger building, building A, the north side of Martway, and then 3 parcels on the south side of Martway. That'll be the smaller building, building B. And those 3 parcels of the old Pizza Hut buildings, remember those? Let me go to the next slide. That is all the existing infrastructure that's around the area right now. Doing infill development is very challenging, as opposed to greenfield development where you're just building on a grassy field somewhere out in Western Shawnee or Western Lenexa. They're attempting to do a pretty sizable development project on existing parcels, plural. So they're gonna buy all these parcels, combine them into one giant parcel, demolish the buildings, and then they're gonna have to either work around this infrastructure or actually move it. So it's a very complicated project, and, Mrs. Coffey's been here, Ms. Coffey, excuse me, has been with us before, and talked about issues with the water line and other utilities. So they have been diligently working through all those issues. They have submitted construction documents to us for review. We've given comments back to them. They've submitted a response to our comments. We're reviewing those now. They have a civil engineer that they've been working with who has submitted his set of plans for all the public improvements down Beverly and Martway. And we've reviewed those and submitted comments back to them, and we're kind of reviewing their second set of plans now. So a lot of moving parts. Ms. Coffey and her team have been working on kind of the fine details, working towards procuring all the properties. They're hoping to close in December, and they're kind of getting down to the wire. And of course, there's always something that pops up. And in this case, it's easements. We can go to the next part. Well, that's the proposed infrastructure work they're gonna do. So that kind of gives you a sense of how complicated this is. That pink line going down Beverly is actually the new storm sewer system. So we have our current storm sewer system goes right down the middle of the property, and they're gonna have to move that over to Beverly. There's also a sanitary sewer line that goes right down the middle of the property. They're gonna have to move that over to Dearborn and then go up a little bit and cross the at-home apartments building project to get to Woodson to connect to a sanitary sewer line that will eventually go to the creek. That's that kind of faint green line that you see up in the upper right-hand corner. And all those little boxes show touch points with other utilities or things that they have to think about as they're moving all this infrastructure around. So, yeah, it's a challenging project, to say the least. That's why it's been a little bit slow coming out of the ground. Okay, so the vacation of easements. The first vacation of easement that they requested of us is a private sanitary sewer line that's located along the very northern boundary of Beverly Park. And this was recorded in 1962. And it was put in to provide for a sanitary sewer line that would connect to a property on the other side of Beverly. Go to the next slide, please. So that's kind of the way the sanitary sewer line looked. So it connected to the existing sanitary sewer line in the middle of the block. And then it went across the top of Beverly Park, which at that time was a parking lot. And then it hit a manhole on the other side of Beverly, went south, and went into that building, which I was told was actually an old JCPenney department store. I don't know if some of you know that or not. I know those Water One offices later. So eventually, we go to the next slide. All those properties were purchased by the city. That became our community center. And we were actually using that line up until about the early 2000s when we did the addition to the community center. So we added to the back of the community center. And at that time, we abandoned the line. And we just installed a new line that connects directly to the green sanitary sewer line that goes right down to Beverly. So we're about 99% sure that nobody else is using that line, but we've been talking to JCW and they're working to confirm that. So they, Millhouse or Mission Beverly would like for us to vacate that easement that goes across the top of the park property. Next slide. Next slide. The other easement, this is a little bit easier, is a common driveway access that was identified or put on the plat for the Martway office buildings back in 2015 when those were platted. So that used to be one large parcel of property with 3 office buildings on it. And the individual that sold those, or the individual that built those passed away. And so his family decided they wanted to sell them. And they thought the best way to sell them would be to break them into 3 individual lots, 3 buildings. So they came to the city and had it platted in 2015 as 3 individual lots. And when they did that, they put a common driveway access between lots 1 and 2. You can go to the next slide, please. This is a little easier to understand picture of that. There's actually a driveway access point between the building on the farthest west and the middle building. But without that common access driveway, the building furthest west would not have any way to get to Martway. So that's why that was put in. Now, Mission Beverly is going to buy all 3 lots. So that issue kind of goes away. But for whatever reason, their title company wants us to vacate the easement. So next slide, please. There is a process for vacating easements, and it's called out in section 440-280 of our code. And actually, I'm not going to read all of this, but it requires a public hearing before the city council. And it requires notice, put in the legal record or the paper of record, at least 2 weeks prior to the public hearing. So yesterday was the first publication of that public hearing notice. And it also requires that the notice be sent to those within 200 feet of the properties, which we've done that. And then at the public hearing, anybody who has any objections can make those objections known. And then if they have an objection, we kind of stop the process at that point. And we go back and we explore that objection, understand why that is. And then we kind of proceed from there. If there are no objections, then the city council can go ahead and pass an ordinance that night vacating the easement. And there are a couple things, actually 3 things that are specifically required in the ordinance itself. And that's a kind of findings of fact, and it's due and legal notice has been given. And there's no private rights that will be injured or endangered. And the public will not suffer or lose any inconvenience by vacation of the easement. So we specifically call those things out in the ordinance. Once the ordinance is approved, we take it to the Register of Deeds and have it recorded. That's the end of the process. Next slide. So we've gone ahead and set the public hearing for Wednesday, November 19th. That's the regular city council meeting. And like I say, we've gone ahead and published the notice and legal record for 2 consecutive weeks. And we've also sent that out to those that are within 200 feet of the subject properties. That's kind of where we're at.
Okay. Does the committee have any questions?
Could you go back to the first or second slide where you're showing the storm sewer or the sewer and what the city owns? I'd like to know what percentage of this property the city owns currently.
Yeah, keep going. Keep going. So you talk about that picture there? So the city owns Mission Beverly Park.
Right, I know that.
Yeah, that's all the city owns in terms of property. You're talking about infrastructure?
Well, easement wise, what do they own that's an easement through there?
We just have right of way around the properties, but there's no easements that we have.
So they're actually purchasing the property from the city, or they're asking to, right?
Yeah, Beverly Park, they'll be purchasing.
Is there somewhere that tells what the cost is?
That was in the development agreement, it was like 500,000, I think it was what?
I'll see if I can't find that, but there's a portion of that was, I think, 500,000, I recall. It's $500,000 total, and I can't remember how we split that between the real estate transaction and just kind of the fee that they're, upfront fee that they're paying us.
Okay, and just, this is not meant to be controversial, but could you just give me a brief summary of what the advantage is to the city in them buying this property?
Well, talk about Beverly Park, that
Mhm.
is, yeah, they need Beverly Park in order to complete their project. So they're gonna need all 5 of those parcels on the north side of Martway to build their project. And if,
This is going back to what we did several months ago.
right, well, several
we-
years ago, actually,
yeah.
I mean, we've been talking about this project now for going on 3 years.
Right, the
Yeah.
transfer of Beverly Park to another area.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. And that's part of the development agreement, was that in exchange for Beverly Park, us kind of releasing or giving them Beverly Park, they would obviously pay for the value of the land. But then they also make a contribution towards park improvements elsewhere in the city. We've kind of tentatively identified. being-
It's not that specific. I mean, we've talked about that. Actually, what we did is we set a price for the acquisition of the real estate. And at the same time, you may recall that we designated several city-owned parcels along the creek channel as parkland,
Mhm.
which ended up being in total more area and acreage than what exists currently in Beverly Park. Part of what's important about making that designation as parkland is once it's designated, the city can't sell that. Similar to, we had to give notice in the process of sharing with the public our plans to sell Beverly Park. So because we have now designated all of those parcels as parkland, should we want to sell any of those in the future, they could potentially be subject to a public vote in that process. So that was the trade-off, and we didn't designate specifically what the additional contribution would be used for. We wanted to leave as much flexibility for the city as possible there.
Thanks.
Wanda?
Yeah, my question, just when we look at development of these things, I've become aware that how do we know there's enough water and utilities to support what we're building? Do we look at that?
We do. We did a study like 15 years ago, kind of availability of water and sanitary sewer. And so we'll refer to that study. Again, it was 15 years ago. So we also reach out to the utility companies and
Yeah.
let them know that this project is being proposed and provide them an opportunity to kind of chime in and let us know if there's any issues they have.
Is that on us or is that on the developer?
Really should be on the developer. I mean, the developer and their engineers should be doing their work up front. But yeah, we always kind of want to double check, but yeah.
Other questions? May I ask a process question here? Since this is going to public hearing on November 19th, these can't be on the consent agenda, or can it?
No, it has to be a public hearing.
Yeah, you'll do the public hearing and then they'll be on the regular agenda.
Okay. And you've gone through all these with this at this point in time? Are there any other questions? Okay.
So how does the public know that this is coming up for a public comment?
Well, there was notices sent to those within 200 feet. And there was also a notice published in the legal record, which is kind of our record of our official newspaper, one of our official newspapers for the city. So that's typically how we give notice when there's a public hearing.
So this, I think it's fair to think of these vacations as really housekeeping items. We went through a probably year and a half, 2 year, maybe longer process in discussing, negotiating the development agreement for the project. And so all of the pieces about the parcels that would be included, that they were going to acquire, the sale of Beverly Park to be a part of that, was all subject to months and months and years of negotiation and meetings open to the public and people that were noticed. So this is really, as Brian mentioned, as they're getting down to the nitty gritty of title work, getting ready to close on all of these properties, they're finding these old easements. And so that the easement at Beverly Park is within the park that we own. So there's no value, additional value And then we don't have any ownership interest other than the easement, right? Well, yes, the easement, for that common access driveway. But
We don't own.
we don't own it at all. There's
Not
just, it's just recorded on the plat,
Mhm.
as Brian said, to provide access to those buildings. So these are really just, again, kind of housekeeping, cleaning up the details. So the larger project that went through that much bigger public process can proceed as approved
We-
by the council.
The only person that benefits from common driveway access is the group of people that own those 3 lots. And my question was, can't they just approve it and make it go away? But the answer is no. Discussing this with our city attorney and kind of looking at the state statutes, we just have to go through this process to formalize it. And it's what will make the title company happy and fine. Okay.
Okay, well, thank you for covering all those items. No more questions? Okay. Our final action item this evening is for the approval of the execution of an interlocal agreement with KDOT for the US 6. Oh, wait a minute. I thought you did all of them at once.
I did the
Oh, okay,
easements.
sorry.
Yeah, we
Sorry.
right away
Number
use agreement
3.
and,
Okay. It was so good with all those vacations. I thought we just did them all together.
yeah,
Okay,
it's just one of the rare times where I have most of the items on the agenda.
okay. So for easements on 625, 6025 and 6045? Okay. Okay, thank you. Our fourth and fifth action items this evening is for approval of a right-of-way of maintenance agreement and use agreement with Mission and Beverly LLC for their project on 5935 Beverly, also from Brian Scott. Thank you.
Okay, there's kind of 2 agreements before us. Actually, I only see one in the packet. This particular item is that's the right one here, just make sure I'm not missing something. This item is a right-of-way use agreement with Mission Beverly LLC for, again, the Mission Beverly project. And in this particular case, as they, again, kind of fine tune their project and really get down to the nitty-gritty, they're finding that there are a couple of cases where the buildings are going to be slightly encroaching into the right-of-way by a couple of cases, inches, in some cases as much as 1.5 feet, a little bit more. And so we kind of talked through that, and we thought that the best approach would be to do a right-of-way use agreement.
Actually, number 4, which is the first one, is the maintenance.
Okay. Oh, here it is. Okay, I skipped over it myself. So the right-of-way maintenance agreement, kind of backing up one item on the agenda. Again, this is with Mission Beverly. And this is a kind of a standard agreement that we enter into with all of our development projects, where we identify those areas that are within the right-of-way that they're responsible for maintaining. And that's landscaping, sidewalks, and in particular, in this case, they're utilizing some on-street parking as part of their project. So there's 9 parking stalls on Martway, then there's kind of a loading, unloading area on Dearborn. It's going to be within our right-of-way. So we just kind of call out who's responsible for what in terms of maintenance. And then once this agreement is approved, it's recorded with the Register of Deeds, and it kind of goes with the property in perpetuity. So, any questions about that?
I have a question. If the parking along Martway is public parking, how can they designate 9 parking spots with the development?
It's public parking, but they're responsible for maintaining it. So they'll have to clean out the snow. If there's any kind of potholes or anything, we're gonna ask them to fix it as opposed to us fixing it. So it's public parking, but it's really kind of for the benefit of their project, for guests that come over, people that want to lease an apartment and need a place to kind of park in front of the building. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, now the last time.
Do we need
Oh,
a recommendation for this one? I'm good with consent. Or everyone else's. It's just my food.
Yeah.
Okay, item number 5, this is the right-of-way use agreement with Mission Beverly.
Mhm.
So I was saying is we're kind of getting down to the fine details of the construction drawings. We're finding that there's some areas where their building's going to be encroaching a little bit into the right-of-way. So there's going to be some terraces that have encroached by, a few inches, maybe a foot or more. Footings that are underneath the sidewalk that can hold up the building will actually be on our right-of-way. And so the best approach is to enter into a right-of-way use agreement whereby we kind of acknowledge that they're in our right-of-way and they understand that. And they're permitted to use our right-of-way. Can't imagine with a situation where it's ever happened, but if we had to have a right-of-way back, they're gonna have to get out of our right-of-way. The simplest way to put it. So that's kind of the purpose of this agreement. And again, once it's passed, it'll be recorded at the county, run with the property in perpetuity.
Questions? Debbie?
So if the property is sold at some point, does that easing into the right of way go with the property or do we get it back? Does it come back to us?
It goes with the property. So if some future date, 50 years from now, the building's still standing and we need to put a utility line or something in there, we can go back to them and say, you're gonna have to move that terrace or you're gonna have to do something with that footing. And it's gonna be on you because you're in our right of way. So this kind of protects our interests for the future.
Have we done this with any other property?
We did this with the parking lot at the Mission Mart Shopping Center in Martway.
Okay.
We recently discovered that the parking lot on the south side of the shopping center, kind of that area in front of the Peanut,
Right,
was actually in the city's right of way.
okay.
And so we entered into this agreement. We said, it's fine, you can go ahead and use it as a parking lot, you're responsible for taking care of it, you have liability on it. But if we ever need it back for a sidewalk or utility work or something like that, we have the right to go back and claim it.
Great, thank you.
Ben?
So Brian, do I understand right that we're talking about some like portions of porches that are extending into the right of way?
Right.
And we're giving a non-exclusive license to use that. So people's porches will be in the right of way. And do we anticipate any trouble with that?
No, we don't.
Can I go sit on their porch and do nothing about it?
Sure, feel free.
I mean, okay. I would prefer they,
Yeah,
Have
there's
some
an
privacy.
example in your packet, kind of goes with the item. You'll just see little examples. It's actually the terrace above. It's the porch, but then it's
Okay.
also the balcony above, next level's up, and also kind of encroach into a right of way. So I think there's one example here where it encroaches 0.54 inches.
0.54 inches. Okay,
yeah,
that's impractical.
32 inches. Yeah,
Not even, yeah.
you can lean against it,
All right, I'll take that, I suppose.
Any other questions?
I recommend consent.
Okay, that's it for me.
That's it? Are you sure? Are we sure? Number of vacations or anything? I'm all about vacations,
I'll be on the next agenda with another item, but yeah. for this
Okay.
meeting.
Our final action item this evening is for approval of the execution of interlocal agreement with KDOT for the US 69 bridge repairs from Stephanie Boyce.
Good evening. In front of you is an interlocal agreement between the City of Mission, the City of Overland Park, and the Kansas Department of Transportation for improvements to the US 69 Metcalf Bridge over Johnson Drive. The existing bridge over Johnson Drive needs to be replaced due to the age, deterioration, and vertical clearance, which doesn't meet KDOT's current standards. The bridge replacement would provide an opportunity to increase safety along US 69. KDOT recently, in 2023, 2024, completed a conceptual study to replace the bridge. However, the final budget estimates exceeded the funding available in the Priority Bridge Replacement Program. So it was determined in the interim that they would make the necessary life, health, and safety repairs in 2026. So improvements on the Mission side would include bridge deck and concrete column repairs, a mill and overlay of the asphalt adjacent to the bridge, extension of the northbound auxiliary lane between 58th and 56th Street, and replacement of existing streetlights along the corridor, which the city already maintains and will continue to do so. The City of Mission and Overland Park have been coordinating over the last year or so with KDOT on this project to align schedules with our upcoming Johnson Drive reconstruction project. And KDOT anticipates letting this project in January of 2026 and requires the participating agencies to execute this agreement for the work that is being completed by KDOT. So staff recommends the execution of the agreement so they can move forward with their project and we can continue coordination with our two projects that will be occurring simultaneously early next year.
Questions? Ben?
Do we have any kind of design for this bridge repair, this 2026? Like, is it roughly exactly the same footprint? Do we know if it'll impact sidewalks or anything at all?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same impact. Like I said, they're extending the auxiliary lane between 58th and 56th Street. So you'll have that longer extension to get on to the highway.
Okay.
And then I believe they're closing the off-ramp on Johnson Drive, I guess that would be the south ramp. But that's on the Overland Park side. So
Those ones that are kind of redundant.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
okay.
they have two ramps. That one, I think, does the loop around, so that one will close. Other than that, pretty much the same footprint.
Okay. Yeah, looks good to me.
This should extend the life of the bridge for about 10 to 15 years. And in the meantime, that conceptual plan went to the local consult process last month for KDOT in which we advocated for the project future for the replacement of the bridge.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Recommend consent.
Recommend consent. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'll ask that for the regular agenda, yeah. Yeah,
But there's no dollar impact for
Yeah.
us.
Right.
But communicating, yes, probably a big deal.
Well, I do have a question. So if there's no dollar impact, then why do we just have to give them permission? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, it's their process to make sure that they have this agreement in place because they'll be working on the ramp adjacent to each of the cities. They're also installing the new street lights, which at their cost, but for us to maintain. So that's incorporated into the agreement as well.
But there's no,
No
Well,
cost to the cities.
and there's no sidewalk or
No
no
sidewalks.
change.
No,
Okay.
nothing that would impact the city's infrastructure.
So regular agenda on this. Thank you. That concludes our action items. We have one discussion item this evening for 2025-2026 snow plan from Brent Morton.
Thank you. Because the season, hopefully it's not coming too quick. But this is our 2025-2026 snow plan and kind of our miscellaneous locations, snow routes, salt application, stuff like that. The packet is in there as well. We'll just kind of walk through it quickly, and if you got any questions, please ask. This is one thing Public Works has pretty dialed in. So we run 2 crews, 24 hours a day. Right now we're full staffed, which has been a long time since we've had that. So we'll be running 2 shifts of 5. So everything should get cleaned up a little quicker. We've got 4 routes around town, 2 big trucks on the main routes. That's the Johnson Drive, Fox Ridges, Martways, and all stuff like that. And they're divided basically. Johnson Drive is kind of our divider line for north and south and Mission. So we have two guys running the main routes, which usually does a pretty good job. And then we break off our smaller trucks and 1 big truck into the neighborhood. So everything's getting pushed at the same time. Some areas go quicker than others, so we'll move trucks around, as needed. 2-hour call-in window, so all our guys have their cell phones, they're aware of the weather. If it's a pop-up storm and we're not aware, which rarely ever happens, they got 2 hours to get to the shop and start pushing snow, but usually they're sitting ready to go, everything's staged, trucks are ready to go, so we usually don't run into that issue very much. We work with the police well, got all their phone numbers for their support staff if we got any issues. Can't pull cars out, but we can notify the police, you know, somebody's stuck or something like that, so. Salt, we've tried last year, Brian, it worked out very well. The only time we really can't use that on the mains and the hills and stuff like that is if it's rained before ice or snow comes, so we just monitor that. It's not cheap, but it works very well, so we just try to use it when the timing's right. Sometimes we'll go out 48 hours before, but usually it's within the 12 to 24 hours, just so we know we're getting the best application with it. We did order some salt slicer. It's just treated salt this year to try to mitigate as much salt as we've been using. So this will be the test run, to see if that stuff helps with the ice. And just less salt we're putting on the roads getting the storm drain. So hopefully it works out good. So our trucks are pretty well dialed in now. We've updated most of the fleet. So we're about 200 to 500 pounds per lane mile. But with our newer equipment, the spreaders will dial in, you can say 300 pounds a lane mile, and it calibrates your speed and everything. So you're just not guessing anymore. So you're not overdoing it with salt. So it's really dialed in with the newer equipment. We calibrate them every year, so there's a lot less waste than there probably was 5 years ago when you're just kind of looking out the back of the truck and, well, that looks pretty good. So it's pretty dialed in now. So there's some cost savings there with the newer equipment. Yeah, 4-man crew. The north side, the residential side, north of Johnson Drive is, I'd say, the most difficult snow route, just the way those neighborhoods are worked out. So we always try to keep 2 trucks over there for full staff. So it's been a few years since we've been able to do that, but this year it's looking like we got the staff to do it, so it should clean up over there a little quicker. But that's usually the last area we're just fine tuning, just because takes the longest. And the mains are our focal point in the beginning, just making sure people can get to where they need to go. Routes are broken up, just like I said. We got maps for number 1s, number 2, number 3 streets on each route. So hills, just known problem areas get pushed first, and then we'll move into the other routes. That's pretty much it. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Oh, sorry about that. We do all city trails and sidewalks on city-owned property, and parks and community center lot, police department, city hall. Those usually fall after the streets are cleared, except for city hall, community center. We kind of work those in when, you know, if we know the community center is going to open up, we might be in there at like 4 a.m. just trying to get the parking lot clean. Same thing with city hall. Trails and sidewalks, that usually falls after we get the streets cleaned up, besides city hall, community center, stuff like that, where we know we need to get people access. But we usually have it cleared within our window that's in our code. Be happy to answer any questions.
Wanda?
I just have one question. Waterworks Park, the kids come through that. Is that, I mean, walking the trail, does that get cleared fairly early, or how
So-
does that work?
So usually if it's bad, schools are closed.
Yeah.
So it's not an issue, and we
Uh-huh.
usually have it cleaned by that time. If there's ever a special condition, I mean, we can get up there and clean it if there seems to be a problem, but usually if it's at 3 to 6 inches and schools are closed, by the time that school is reopened,
You've got it done?
yes,
Okay, thank you.
and school zones do take priority. School zones do take priority when we're pushing city-owned sidewalks and school zones.
Other questions? Yes, Leah.
I don't really have a question, just to comment. You guys have always done a great job of getting the streets cleared quickly and people can get to work, and I know people truly appreciate that. So whatever you're doing, it's good.
It helps. The city's all the same every year too. Also, kudos to you guys. We have a great fleet, and it's taken a long time to get there. So that's a big part of city council as well. So the guys really do appreciate it and take care of their equipment, and it looks nice. And I mean, you just feel good driving something that's halfway decent. So they do appreciate it.
Debbie?
Are we fully staffed in Public Works?
Yes. It's probably the first time in 5 years where I'm not on a snow shift. I'm there to help, but it just, we'll see how it goes, but I think we're in good shape with our staff right now, so.
Great. Thank you.
Awesome.
One question I have, are the snowplows names going to change or are we going to have a contest again?
They will. Probably
Okay.
has dates, but yes, they change every year now.
Yes, so we will be excited to message out the snow plan and some sidewalk snow information and from Public Works, and our 2025-26 snowplow naming contest will open on Friday. So put your thinking caps on. We'll have a couple of weeks to submit names, and then we'll have a top 10 and you'll vote on those after that.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Brent.
All right, thank you.
Before we adjourn, Ms. Smith, are there any department updates for the Community Development Committee?
Brian, do you have anything else? No, I think we're good. Thank you.
Okay, it is now 7:12 PM and with no further discussion, that concludes the meeting of the Community Development Committee. Again, this video will be made public on our website at missionkansas.org. Thank you so much.
Ready to keep going? Okay. It is now still 7:12 PM and I'd like to call this meeting of the Finance and Administration Committee to order. While this meeting is being held in person, we are also offering the option for the public to participate through Zoom if preferred. Instructions on how to attend virtually are included in the City Council calendar item listed on the front page of missionks.org. The public is also invited to participate in the meeting. If you are participating through Zoom, please either add your comment in the chat feature and it will be read out loud, or note that you would like to speak and we will call on you shortly to make your comment verbally. Please remember your comments or questions are visible to everyone in the meeting. If you are part of our in-person group tonight, please raise your hand but stay seated and we will call on you to go to the lectern to make your comment. When you make your comment, please state your name and city of residence for the record. Also, be conscientious of others trying to speak and speak slowly and clearly. This meeting will be recorded and posted on the city's website at missionks.org. Please contact the administration offices at 913-676-8350 with any questions or concerns. Ms. Folks, will you please call the roll?
Vaughn?
Here.
Loudon? Here. Ryard?
Here.
Green?
Here.
Josie?
Here.
Carpenter Davis?
Here.
Thank you. First item of business tonight is public comment. Is there any member of the public who would like to comment now on an item not on our agenda tonight? Please note public comments are limited to 3 minutes. Seeing none. Moving on to public presentations. We do not have any public presentations this evening, so we'll move on to action items. And our first action item this evening is the acceptance of the meeting minutes from Robin Folks.
Thank you. Draft minutes of the October 8th Finance and Administration Committee meeting are included for review and acceptance in your packet tonight.
Consent? Okay. Thank you. Our second action item this evening is for consideration of a funding agreement with Encore Land LLC for the Encore project from Laura Smith.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Yes, good evening. So most of you are familiar with, Councilmember Vaughn may not be familiar with the fact that whenever we entertain a request from a developer to consider a request for incentives, we enter into a funding agreement. We've played with the name over the years, and more recently, we've landed on funding agreement. And what this does is this requires the developer to escrow funds. In this case, we've actually increased the initial escrow. We had previously asked for $10,000. What we found over the last several years is then we're having to go back at the conclusion of projects and invoice again. So we've increased the initial escrow to cover the city's costs in reviewing that request for incentives. So that would cover any costs associated with work done by our financial advisor, our bond counsel, or others looking at the project. So this agreement is pretty standard. It will just designate Encore Land LLC. As Brian talked about with the Millhouse project, it is common for developers to create a separate standalone LLC for each project. In this case, which is this is going to be the revised Phase 2 project and request from Sunflower Development Group. You'll recognize Mr. Floodman here in the audience, and he'll tell you a little bit about the project, but more to come. Tonight is really just about getting this funding agreement in place. Their preliminary development plan, it has been submitted and is scheduled for the November Planning Commission meeting. And then the ball will really get rolling on the next request. Their request as it relates to incentives would be to seek tax increment financing similar to what was approved on the Phase 1 project. And actually you had previously approved a smaller version of a Phase 2 project with those similar incentives. So I would be happy to answer any questions, and then I'll invite Mr. Fledman up to just share a little bit about the Encore.
And Councilmember Loudon.
You said that the escrow amount was increasing. What is it increasing to?
$20,000 from 10,000.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Conor? Okay, then
Okay.
I did just send you a picture in your email. but-
Okay.
Yeah, they sent the wrong guy.
oh,
Well, let's see.
Can you just forward it to council?
So we are excited. This phase 2 is expanding. We've been working with Wendy's corporate, which has been kind of like this. But we were able to get the land under contract and close on the property 2 weeks ago now. So it's official. We have the Wendy's property as well. And so the plan would be to work our way down on Martway from the Brain lot that we purchased as well to the city transit lot to the Wendy's, and continue to actually finish the retaining wall that I know the city attempted to finish years ago, to just the south of the Wendy's. And our plan would be to finish that retaining wall as planned, continue just to the east there. And we would add, our plan is, and I hope we can pull up the rendering, but to add no problem at all. 180 to 181 units. They would be 4 stories, not 5. We're sensitive to the grade kind of to the south there. The elevations go down a little bit as you go further to the east. And so we would try to limit that to 4 stories. But it would be, we think, very, very complementary to everything, the lanes, Mission Mart, and much better than a Wendy's that just kind of sits there and hangs out now. So we did have a neighborhood meeting last week. We just one neighbor showed up. They had concerns initially on what was going to happen with the Wendy's. I think there was a thought that the Wendy's was going to stick around, but we assured her that that was not going to be the case. And so, no, again, the project, the plan is to have the lanes, and then no longer phase 2, it will be called Encore. The name may shift a little bit, as Brian's familiar with. We had a couple name changes with the lanes, but just a couple. But we would continue it down the block and hopefully finish what we would consider finalizing kind of the Martway corridor, at least in that area. We're excited about it. We would have many of our same partners. There'd be a little bit of a switch in some of our partners, but for the most part, it is our group and it is our equity investor that loves the area and as much as we do. And hopefully something that you guys will consider. I pointed out the funding agreement increase and deposit as well, but understand that lawyers and attorneys and all that fun stuff got much more expensive. So we completely understand that. And but we're excited. We're excited to continue to work in mission and happy to answer any questions you may have. Unit count will be pretty similar to what the lanes is. Predominantly really 1s in this case. We'll have a significant amount of studios and some 2s. And then we'll try to do some pretty cool rooftop amenities, which will be a little shift from the lanes that you can kind of see here. And again, this is early in the process, so we're still working through the details, but you can get an idea. Really sensitive over not overwhelming Martway with just one long straight building, because that's a long way. And so we've tried to incorporate different setbacks, as you'll see in the site plan that we submitted. Really tried to focus on Laura and Brian's feedback on trying to emphasize the Rock Creek Trail as much as possible, which we believe we've done. But this gives you an idea of the different, you can see the height that goes down a little bit, steps down similar to the grade kind of to the south there. But parking was definitely, it's kind of, this is a tough site. It's very long and narrow. And so it didn't give us a lot of opportunity to do a lot of parking behind it, right on the Rock Creek. And so we had to get kind of creative. And so we thought, what better way to do this than kind of have the parking structure that'll be blended in between the projects mid-block as opposed to at the end of either sides. And so you can kind of see here, you've got the lanes right here, the parking structure right here that'll connect to the 4-story structure here. And then you have the units. And then in the middle here, you have kind of the rooftop terrace. That'll be kind of your upscale, up top level amenities. And then you've got, this will be your kind of main walk-in, your fitness, your leasing offices. We're going to continue with pool, spa, all the things that people want to see, and especially being connected to the Rock Creek Trail, want to take their dogs out too and hang out and all that good stuff. So that's a good picture, but happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, Councilmember Crane.
Do you have a range of rents on the?
We do. We're still working through that. There'll be kind of a trended rent similar to what it's at the lanes now. So trended just in with kind of annual increases that we're happy to share, and we'll work just like we did in the both the lanes, what was phase 2, and then now Encore, with Bruce and his team on establishing those to make sure that those are consistent with what we believe market is, and we know the market, so we do think they're consistent. We'll pursue this very similar incentives from the TIF perspective, with the understanding that that's going to require certain kind of a affordable 60 AMI housing component. Lead silver again. If we're going to do it once, we kind of got it down now, so I think we would continue that. And then I think I'm missing one. Lead silver, affordable.
It's the tiered TIF revenue sharing.
Yeah, that's the other one. Exactly right. But very similar. We also, another reason we shifted from kind of the phase 2 idea was we didn't want to overwhelm the amenities on the lanes. You know, they're a good size, but we didn't want to just add 96 units if we didn't have to. That would be people utilizing all those amenities. We thought it might kind of overwhelm those amenities and maybe decrease the value and maybe the experience for some of the residents. And so we shifted away from that. But you can see it's complementary to it. It doesn't look the same. We were very sensitive to some of your comments on phase 1 and especially early on. I heard hotel, I heard other things, and we wanted to mix it up, keep the colors and kind of keep that similar vibe, but make it break up quite a bit as you go down the street. I think our architects did a good job, at least at this stage, of accomplishing that. So.
Yeah, let's just go down the line. Leah.
Okay, are the lanes full, or what's the vacant?
So yeah, so the most recent leasing update, we are 98% leased, 94.8% occupied. And you know, that was one, we did open it in phases. We opened it in phases because we did have some construction delays. And so that created us moving people in when construction was still going on, which we're always sensitive to, and can always create frustration when people move in, when you have debris and construction workers on site. We navigated, we were able to work with the city. And overall, everybody's having a great experience. And you know, the way that we baseline, you know, our projects is if you can achieve north of kind of a 55% renewal, which means people continue to want to stay in your facility, then that's usually a pretty good sign. And for the first month, which is November, we have 19 leases up for renewal, and we have about 65% renewing. And we hope to have a similar percentage in December. Those are tough months to lease, right in the dead of winter. And so the fact that we're able to get those renewals and people are wanting to stick around is a good sign, I think, for the future and people continuing to want to at least live in this area, which is the objective from the beginning.
Ms. Councilmember Vaughn?
That was my question, was occupancy.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay.
I
Yep.
do,
Yep.
I know initially we had talked about parking, some of the parking having to be across the street.
Yes.
Is that still,
No.
okay, so this
This.
sorted
this is-
that.
This has sorted that out and the new owner of Waltz Dietrich, Charlie and his team, we were able to work out, kind of came to the realization that they didn't want to monitor residents on their property on Saturdays and Sundays and after 5 PM, Monday through Fridays. And we didn't want to do the same on our site. So it's just, we came to a collective agreement that that was probably in the best interest of everybody. There still will be some on-street parking that'll be general public parking. That'll think will be hopefully advantageous for whether it's Mission Mart or Waltz Dietrich or the live work units. But that is to the extent of what that agreement will consist of. And then there will be, obviously you have the transit lot, which is a discussion that we're working through as well right now. But I will say on the lanes, the live work units, those were ones that were a little more difficult to lease than we anticipated. I think people are just so accustomed to their apartments kind of just being one level, not necessarily two level, and having maybe a street access. And so we do have 4 of the 7 leased. Those are actually the last units to lease up, but people are, I think, becoming accustomed to them and starting, once you get 1 or 2 people in them with their friends and their friends are coming over or their family, they kind of realize these are actually pretty cool. And so we've had some good positive momentum, but it took a little while for people to understand it.
I'm glad to hear that's working out.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, and with sort of friendly interests on both sides of that sale with the deed restrictions, don't be afraid to revisit us if you ever think retail is viable there.
I trust.
I know you will.
We absolutely will. We're still
know.
working hard on the property to the north
Yeah.
on everything on the south side where Fabulous Find.
You bet.
And and Tuesday morning was. So.
You just have so many folks there now ready to walk out the door and shop.
But Sweat Lab, we're excited. Sweat Lab's excited there. They're doing great. That's a space that has been activated and we think driving a lot of great traffic to the area. So.
Yeah. Seems like you're ahead of me on this, but it's the streets, that ground floor streetscape activation is I think critical for Martway, but I think it looks like you've already considered that pretty heavily and also, yes, thank you for continuing to look at, dovetailing with our transit center and transit-oriented development. That's important to a lot of folks in the community as well. So that's.
When is this going to be completed?
Well, it's a great question. I think as soon as we can work with Laura, Brian and the team and kind of work through it and figure it out. But in a perfect world, I think, construction, late second quarter, early third quarter of next year. And then probably it's 20 month construction period, maybe 22 at the tops. Or 24, Brian's doing 24. But I think in a perfect world, we'd like to open mid 2028 would be ideal.
Councilmember Crane.
My compliments to you for negotiating with Wendy's.
It's just, we had a friend of a friend know a guy. I mean, that's usually, it always works that way, but it was not easy. It was a lot of unanswered phone calls. So we're happy. I know you guys worked a long time on trying to get that access on that lot, but we were lucky to get a hold of it and it wasn't easy.
If there are any other questions or comments, the question is on the funding agreement only. Is there a recommendation?
Regular agenda.
Okay.
Chelsea, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Just to kind of preview the process, as I know Councilmember Vaughn, you haven't been, so this is kind of the beginning of this very long public process that's going to take place around a development project. So this is step 1. And so two things will be happening somewhat simultaneously. So the preliminary development plan that will be considered by the Planning Commission are what we refer to as the zoning entitlement. So on any project, the developer is going to be going through that process to get the planning and zoning approvals to build the project in accordance with all of our ordinances. And alongside of that, so when the preliminary development plan comes to you as the council for review, you'll see a much greater level of detail of treatments and layout and all of those kinds of things. So you'll have an opportunity to really kind of dig in. It was a great rendering, but you'll have that opportunity to talk through, ask questions, ask for things that you want to see on the zoning entitlement and the plan review side. And then kind of alongside of that, we'll be working through the incentive process through all the publication of TIF notices and all of those kinds of things, and negotiation of a development agreement and a review of financial analysis of the project and an analysis of, but for the use of incentives, is this project financially feasible? And again, the initial ask, so we expect that the developer will have a TIF project plan. That would be the next step that would have to go to the Planning Commission to be found in conformance with our comprehensive plan, probably looking at that in January. And then that really kicks off the discussion around the TIF incentives.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Our third action item this evening is for consideration of an update to the city-issued credit cards council policy from Justin Carroll.
All right, as alluded to last month, we are going to start bringing some of these policies forward to kind of update them. And so at your desk, you have what's actually starting from the top is just the table of contents for the policies, in case you haven't seen that. That actually lists what all the current council policies are. And you can see some very dated references and dates on here. So we are going to start making our way through those. The first one tonight is Council Policy 118, which deals with the city's P cards. I know, don't be scared, there's a lot of red in the red line, but basically what all these changes really do, it really modernizes this policy and brings it into current practices is what the city's doing. And then as part of your council packets, there was the city's purchasing card policy and procedure handbook. And that's really the nuts and bolts document that dictates how to use the purchasing cards, all of the parameters for that, for not only staff, but for the council as well, and how to reconcile that and what we do for misuse and what the cards are allowed, the expenses they're allowed to be used for, et cetera. And so that's why we removed a lot of that language that was dated and just referenced old procedures and everything, and really kind of turned this more into an actual policy document. And then to get into kind of, again, the details, you have the handbook, which was provided as in the packet. So a lot of moving parts and a lot of red, but I think the handbook is stuff that we really kind of lean on and revise, and that really kind of dictates how we handle this. And so I'd be happy to stand for questions on this one.
Questions or comments? Is there a recommendation?
Consent agenda.
Okay.
Thank you for taking this on. Looks like it's something that's much needed.
And for those, so when we do officially, when it's adopted, I'll have signature pages. If you saw on the very back, I've got these from a lot of you, not everyone. They're all up to date and whatnot on the guide or the handbook set.
Okay, and the next item also from Justin Carroll is for consideration of an update to the city council travel policy.
So very similar. This was a policy that had been in place for a long time, and also just outlined very specific old dated procedures and was pretty specific about the council travel and everything related to, related to that. And so trying to kind of follow the same as the previous item with policy 113 is really just keeping this kind of, it does have some specifics in there, but more higher level, kind of talks about items that the council travels to with the state or local groups, and if you're a member, if you're on the board, and kind of the travel that's affiliated with that, and really specific to overnight travel is what this is geared towards. There's really not, if you're traveling in the city, the registration, stuff like that, that's not what this is really dictated towards. That's just kind of the city covers those for you for any of that stuff you attend. But for the overnight travel, and again, also outlines a little bit of the procedure for you for how to reconcile and references the policy, the purchasing card procedure handbook. So again, I know there's a lot of red in that document, took out a lot of specifics with the whole mileage and things of that nature, but just kind of trying to modernize it. So, and for anyone that's interested, I can tell you, when we reference the GSA's M and IE rate, which is the per diem, the base one is $68. $16 for breakfast, 19 for lunch, and 28 for dinner, unless you go, and then it ratchets on up depending on the cost of living of where you would travel to, is the current rate. So, and mileage is 71 cents, I believe, is the current federal
It's
rate.
about that, yeah.
Yeah.
Questions, comments, or a recommendation, please?
Consent.
Okay. And our next action item this evening is consideration of a contract for 2026 legislative advocacy services with Little Government Relations, also with Justin Carroll.
Yeah, so we have the more juicy item later to kind of start talking about the legislative platform, but along with that is just renewing our agreement with Stuart Little and Little Government Relations for continue their advocacy services for 2026. It's been a great relationship, and there was no price increase going for 25 to 26, and be happy to answer any questions on that. But again, we can kind of discuss the platform and everything when we get that later on the agenda.
Questions on the contract or recommendation?
Recommendation, consent.
Consent, thank you.
And comment, it's been great. It's always good to get that information, and the summaries are fantastic.
All right, thank you, Justin. Our sixth action item this evening is consideration of a renewal of the interlocal agreement with Johnson County for 2026 IT support services from Brian Scott.
Okay. So we've had a interlocal agreement with Johnson County for IT support services for going on well over 15 years now. Their Department of Innovation and Technology, DTI, is the one that provides the services to us, and they provide services not only for us, but a lot of the smaller communities in Northeast Johnson County that just don't really have the staff to have their own IT person or department. So for us, it's IT support for City Hall and all the general administrative departments, as well as the police department. And the police department has some kind of unique IT support services. That's why it's broken out that way. They went through a few years ago and reevaluated their services and tried to kind of align their costs more with what they're providing. So it was a pretty substantial increase at that time, but since then it's been pretty level. So this year, the cost would be $107,740.41, which is a 4% increase over last year. And it's broken down to $56,000 for City Hall or general services and $51,000 for police. And we do have a line item budget total in the 2026 budget of $215,000 to cover these services and other services. So.
Councilmember Crane.
Can you give us just an idea, how many hours a month do you think we use them?
That's a good question. Probably more than we realize. So there's a computer issue. They're the ones we call, and I don't really track that per se, because each person kind of calls on their own with their specific issue, but probably 100 hours or so. The nice thing is when we have projects, a lot of times they don't charge us for the projects.
We're not limited to hours.
Yeah, so a
right?
few years ago, we bought all new laptops, and they had a couple guys come out here and unbox the laptops and set them up and ghost the image and take them around to each individual and kind of get them set up, and they never charge us for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Councilmember Vaughn.
I just don't know. Do they maintain the web pages, or do they
No, it's
just,
another service.
they just do
Yeah.
whatever the computer?
Just the computer and servers upstairs. a server room, they maintain those. And they do all our backup. So all our data stored in the server, they back that up every night.
So they do remote or they come out?
A little bit of both, yeah. They have a help desk and sometimes we call the help desk and they can just remote into our computer and solve our problem. Other times they come out. We do our IT support, or not, IT security support, I should say.
I think if I remember correctly from last year, this is quite a bit better than any other price that we were able to find, so.
And we've
just for
talked to some
reference,
private
yeah.
consulting firms in the past and it's easily 6 figures.
There is, if you're interested, a link in there to their entire services agreement, if you're curious what all they do. It's pretty detailed. Councilmember Craig.
Have we ever considered doing any kind of sharing of that particular contract with Roland Park or somebody close on a smaller scale community like ours?
I mean, I thought about it, but frankly, it's with the bandwidth, it's putting together an RFP and soliciting proposals, then managing it, and DTI is doing that already. I mean, they're providing for all their county employees and county departments as well as the smaller cities. So there's kind of a greater economy of scales going with the county as opposed to going with a contractor serving 2 or 3 cities in Northeast Johnson County.
And I think what we found is the bench and the variety of skill sets that, because of the county size, we can't just hire really even 1 or 2 people to do all of those kinds of things. We'd sort of be then hiring for one-off special projects. But most of the smaller cities in the Northeast are on a similar contract with Johnson County as we are.
Yeah, IT's so specialized now. You have IT security and you have application specialist and network support specialist and become very specialized.
And how responsive are they? Are they fast or?
Yeah, I mean, they answer the phone when we call, they try to respond to issues. Sometimes issues are a little bit complicated, so it takes a little bit more time to kind of dive into it, but yeah, I would say they're responsive.
And again, they have a breakdown of
Yeah.
what the problem is and how fast they agree to
kinda
respond.
triage it.
It's all laid out in their
They
agreement.
developed that a few years ago, a system for triaging the issues.
So they do have a sort of a contractual obligation to be timely for certain things. Councilmember Loudon.
It just sounds like you're pretty happy with the service that they're providing at this point.
Mhm.
Any further questions or comments on the IT support services agreement or a recommendation?
Regular agenda.
Regular agenda, okay. Thanks, Brian. Our 7th action item this evening is for consideration of the 2026 Drug and Alcohol Council recommendation from Robin Folks. Hello.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So it is November, which means I bring to you a couple of allocations from the city's budget to support residents in our community. The first one is for the special alcohol tax fund. So as you may know, the state statute in Kansas requires a 10% liquor drink tax on any drink sale that contains alcohol sold by clubs, caterers, or drinking establishments. The state statute allows 30% of that to go to the state and 70% of those funds collected to come to the city. The state statute further then stipulates how that money is allocated in the city's budget. So a third of it goes to a special alcohol tax fund, and that alcohol tax fund is established to support programs whose principal purpose is alcoholism and drug abuse prevention or treatment of persons who are alcoholics or drug abusers or are in danger of becoming alcoholics or drug abusers. In 2026, we estimate about $390,000 will come to the city through that special alcohol tax fund. A third of that is about $130,000, and that has been proportioned for the city's special alcohol tax fund. Of that, 70,000 of that money in the 2026 budget, 70,000 was allocated to the Drug and Alcoholism Council. The Drug and Alcoholism Council is a program that is supported by the United Community Services of Johnson County. What they do is put out a call for groups to submit grant opportunities, applications. They review those, and then the grants are structured and given out in a manner that the organizations have access to funds from multiple participating jurisdictions. So cities in the county all contribute allocated funds for these purposes. The Drug and Alcoholism Council takes all of the applications for the grants that come in and they review them and they allocate funds based on need and services provided. So at this point, we are looking for a confirmation of the allocation of the 2026 Special Alcohol Tax Fund, $70,000 to the Drug and Alcoholism Council. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions or comments? Yes, Councilmember Loudon.
Just noticed that the agency that I work for is one of the recipients, so does that
Okay.
mean that I should abstain from voting?
You would certainly abstain from voting if this goes on the regular agenda. If it goes on the consent agenda, then you could just abstain from voting on the consent agenda.
Do I have to?
It's, a-
Yes, but how much is the grant award?
No.
We'll look at that, Councilmember Loudon, and we'll give you a definitive answer before we get to the 19th, so you know what to do. But thank you for bringing that to our attention.
I had never noticed that before, so thank you for providing.
and do you want to email me with the name of the organization or do you want to say it during the meeting?
Yeah. I think you should probably. Put that on right. It's like 120.
We will put that on the regular agenda. And I did reach out to the county to ask for some information for you all about the services that they've provided. I know sometimes we've had some questions about how many mission-specific residents are served by the overarching umbrella of the county services. So for the 2024, which was the most recent data that they had available, they served a total 68,020 people countywide. About 256 of those were mission residents. So.
Were there any other comments or questions on that item, or was everybody all right with the regular agenda recommendation?
One question.
Mhm.
I assume because this is a grant that they have documented outcomes and on this program, like recidivism and stuff like that?
From the different organizations that receive the grant funds, I
Right.
believe that they do have some requirements for reporting throughout the year. We could definitely reach out and ask if there's any more data or information we could provide on those outcomes.
Okay, the final action item this evening, also from Robin Folks, is consideration of the 2026 Human Service Fund allocation.
All right, similar but not the same. The Human Service Fund allocation is also through the United Community Services of Johnson County, and it's not-for-profit corporation that coordinates and supports initiatives and programs that provide for human service needs in Johnson County residents. The Human Service Fund provides a cost-efficient mechanism for local cities to support a number of services that help residents during difficult times. This year, staff recommends a contribution of $11,000 to the Human Service Fund. That's what we had in the 2026 budget. That is a $500 increase from last year when we had $10,500 allocated. And similar to the previous item, the HSF in 2024 served 64,930 countywide residents. And in 2024, mission-specific residents, about 1,000 were served. And they broke that down a little bit more for us. So over 3,199 units of service were benefited by mission residents. So a unit of service could be a bed at a shelter or visiting a case manager. Each time would be a unit of service. The most frequent service providers to residents in mission were Catholic Charities, Sunflower House, and the Health Partnership Clinic. We'd be happy to answer any questions on this one.
Questions or comments? Or a recommendation? Consent?
You know.
I didn't see you on there, if it makes a difference. Consent, okay. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you.
Moving on to discussion items. We do have two discussion items this evening. The first, that discussion about the 2026 legislative priorities from Justin Carroll. He's up there already.
All right.
Hmm.
All right, so in your packets, what you have is last year's legislative platform. So just kind of as a process. So what we're doing now is, the platform is the document that kind of outlines your priorities and areas of interest or concern to kind of be communicated or advocated by up to the state legislators up in Topeka during the legislative session. So it's kind of a guiding document that Mr. Little and his team can use. Although, when the really hot and heavy items start coming, they're always keeping us in communication and checking in. But in general, this is kind of the overarching document they use. And so this is kind of the first crack at it. We didn't even make any changes at all to the debate. It's just literally last year's. And like just as a quick reminder, the changes that were incorporated last year, went and pulled it. Based on what we were kind of anticipating, we added an explicit blurb in there about zoning and just maintaining local control over zoning policy. That was an addition that we called out. We noted that there'd been the constant back and forth with K-12 funding and that they'd finally kind of settled that. And so it was just noted, the language we added was just, hey, you did fully fund K through 12 education, continue to do so. Added a blurb in there regarding just multimodal transportation and just emphasize, not only roads and bridges, but just thinking about other ways to look at transportation or opportunities beyond car miles. And then we, specifically, it was as part of the housing needs, we had unhoused populations, and we actually just called that out and just made it its own section just for unhoused. And then the last blurb added was just about the World Cup, and that the state had put some funding towards the World Cup and just encouraging them to answer that call if there's anything more needed and just encouraging that. So that is the base platform. When we come, so I'll let Mr. Little come up. He can kind of give a little preview. In your packet for next month, what we'll have is the chambers got their own legislative policy, so you can see what they've got. In this packet, you had the link to the League of Kansas Municipalities Statement of Municipal Policy. So just to kind of give you some other options of things that folks are looking at. But with that, unless you have any specific questions kind of on process or anything, I would turn it over to him to kind of just preview what's coming up.
Any questions or comments off the top here? Okay. Mr. Little. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good evening. Congratulations to those of you that are going to be here for a while longer. I will give just a brief overview of where we are in the legislative session. We can have a meatier session about the platform later, but I'm also happy to answer any questions you might have. We are going to go into the legislative session on the 12th of January. We're going to move very quickly, in part because of the 2026 election cycle coming up. There are lots of folks that want to get out and start raising money and start campaigning and those kinds of things, and maybe not have to vote on some things that might be bad to vote on. So that's part of the incentive. So we'll move quickly. They moved fast last year or this year, and that'll be, if not quicker, this coming year. There are some issues that are going to be discussed. There's going to be a lot more trimming of the budget. So if you care about those kinds of things, that's going to be scrutinized. And as you may recall, we now have a legislative group that had their first meeting yesterday to start cutting the budget before even the governor submits her budget. So we've started getting into that process because the legislature wants to have their own budget, and that resulted in, I think they cut about 300 million out of the budget last year. So the idea is to do that again. Some of the things that we're going to be dealing with legislatively are some of the standards. Property tax, obviously that is the top of the list for everyone in Topeka in the conversations. The challenge is the capacity for the state legislature to get the votes to do things that would either restrict themselves or restrict you all in terms of taxing. And so Justin referenced some of the craziness. The last week of the session, I think we may have sent over 4 or 5 different tax proposals that came up that people were trying to do, and some were going to require a public vote. Some were going to require a supermajority of a governing body to raise taxes and those kind. And of course, there's no consensus on how to do that, and I'm not sure that there is this coming session either. I we're also we have two constitutional amendments that are out there. And that is, that would, you know, cap budgets, cap growth, those kind of things. I don't know that, they have never had the super majority to get those passed. And, I'm not sure they're there now, even going in. Couple of other little things I would note. There's going to be a continuation of, some of the issues that we've watched that are in particularly local focused, home-based business legislation that began to make its way through. It was, got a bit of agreement passed out of the House. It's in the Senate. It started out very big in terms of the flexibility that it would exist, and it's been narrowed a bit to incorporate whatever HOA restrictions are. And of course, it has language in there about public safety and those kinds of issues. You don't have, 40 cars parked in the street and and issues like that, doing some work. But there is great interest in it going forward. It was the subject of an interim committee discussion, so it is going to come back. And the people that are pushing it believe they have agreements on dealing with some of those issues. I think ADU or AUDs, whichever we call them, are coming up as topics that will be discussed in some ways. And as an odd twist that just came up in the Commerce Conference or interim committee just the other day, there's some consideration of trying to get some short-term waivers for restrictions on those short-term rentals during the World Cup. So we'll see what transpires out of that, and that'd be something that'd have to come up pretty quickly. Maybe last but not least, well, a couple more things. The redistricting question is not gone. It is going to be, was in a meeting with some legislators today, and it is on the list. They're going to take that up when they come back in January. I don't know where you get too far into the session to not be able to have, just pragmatically where things can go, but it's not over. There will be, I think, a couple things that we've always been interested in is getting rid of Capers 3. That's still an incredibly expensive proposition, but it's not going to go away, I think, for a while. So I'm happy to answer any specific questions you might have, or general ones for that matter.
Councilmember Crane.
Do you have any updates on home rule?
Well, is there something specific that
No, but I mean, there was fluctuation in the past over how we dealt with home rule, and I just wondered if there's anything legislatively that's.
Well, I think the position of the League of Municipalities, that's a top priority on their platform as well. And I think some of these issues with regard to local businesses, I guess there's another issue that popped up this summer too that we're going to have to wrestle with, is an effort to implement a statewide credentialing process for trades, so that you and in local communities would lose the ability to have your own requirements for some of those trades. And that's going to get some attention. It was also in the Commerce Committee that just met last week. So those kinds of things, the property tax issues, there are some where we seem to never be able to escape right-of-way issues. There's another group of people coming back to talk about franchise fees and right-of-ways. I believe they're the video people this time. So there are a lot of those things that continue to be there. We have been lucky to have a generally very supportive local government committee in the House and the Senate, which is kind of sat on as many of these things as they can, but you never know.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay.
So if you, between now and December committee, have an opportunity to review the various pieces, things that you have questions or things that you would like to see incorporated, please provide those to Justin, and then we'll make sure that gets incorporated in the draft, which will be an action item at the December committee meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Little and Justin and Laura. Our second discussion item this evening is related to regulations to address camping on public property and issues related to Mission's unhoused population, with Laura Smith and Chief Madden.
Robin's got a couple of slides
very similar to a presentation and a conversation that we had in February of this year. So we really don't have, just to spoiler alert, I don't have a proposed ordinance. We really kind of want to just talk through, you may recall that in February of this year, we had a city council work session where this was one of the issues that we talked about, and just what not only just regulation of camping in public places, but serving the in-house population here in our community. We're going to share some statistics. We're continuing to see some increased impacts in terms of demands for service or calls for service related to that. There's some unique circumstances that relate to the KDOT right-of-way or the KDOT interlocal agreement that was on your Community Development Committee agenda. So we wanted to just talk through several of these things. We're looking for some additional direction. We're not, again, just to reengage in the conversation, which we think is important. So next slide, please. Maybe. Next slide, please. So this is the exact slide that you saw in February, and you may recall that Johnson County or United Community Services does what they call a point-in-time snapshot each year, and typically, and I think last year or in 2024 they did 2 of those, one in January and one in October. And so these are just some summaries. We don't have the updated point-in-time counts, and when we have those, we'll come back and share that information. But what we saw between January and October of 2024, the numbers total really remained unchanged, but we saw 87% increase in terms of those that were unsheltered. So then you start to dig in and say, why? When we looked at this in February, a lot of that was probably reflective of milder temperatures. So people weren't seeking shelter as early in the year because they were able to stay outside. And then the lack of cold weather shelters that exist in Johnson County is also a problem. So we also know that the county's proposal to create additional housing and a service center did not receive approval in 2024. So that has not come back in any similar fashion. The plan at that time was to convert a hotel at 95th and I-35 into the service center and additional housing to serve the unhoused. So next slide. So what's happening here in Mission? So, and again, a lot of this is information that we've talked about before, but unhoused individuals have really become more visible over the last several years. So we ask ourselves why. A lot of that has to do with public and private property being available, or where we've seen them, both on public and private property, in our parks, in dumpster enclosures on private property, laundry rooms of apartment complexes, highway underpasses. And why we've made a very specific and concerted effort in transit, and that makes our community accessible in ways that other communities might not be. We're a safe community. We have access to public restroom facilities with some of the improvements that we're making, particularly in our outdoor park systems. And we have walkable access to a variety of goods and services. So whether that's prepared food or grocery stores. In 2023 and 2024, our police department responded to 98 calls related to unhoused individuals. 66 of those 98 were related to one individual in our community, which equated to about 1 call or 1 response per week. So year to date in 2025, we've responded to 95 calls related to possible unhoused individuals. And so that number is increasing. We're averaging about just shy of 2.5 calls or responses per week related to the unhoused. I think Councilmember Vaughn has a question.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just need to know if 66 for one individual. So actually there's an increase in contacts in individuals actually, because there's no 66 for one individual in 25. Is that correct? Is that what I'm reading?
I don't think you could break down the number.
Because look,
A significant number of calls in 25 have been related to the same individual, but we have seen a tremendous increase in just the number of incidents involving unhoused individuals throughout the community.
so my interpretation is that there's an increase of unhoused in 2025, correct? Is that what I'm saying? Okay.
That had become more visible to us. We don't know if that's true, but there is an increase of those who have become visible and who we are interacting with in some fashion. We've seen, the pictures on this slide are both taken from areas in Mission. And the one that where in the picture with the snow you might be most familiar with, this is an area that's over next to Big Biscuit up along the Johnson Drive and Metcalf Bridge and overpass. We had a couple of the businesses in that area who reached out to the council last February just to express kind of concern about all of that. And that's really what generated the presentation and most of the information that we're covering here. I think the other one was taken in an area off of Fox Ridge Drive on the north end of the city. I don't know if that is what it looks like currently or more recently. Both of these spots happen to be public-owned property, so there's no prohibition and no one at this point who the city, we can't trespass them. It's not private property. A private property owner couldn't trespass them. And we have, in particular, one individual who is very, I would say, very sophisticated about where the public property limits are and where they can be and where they are not allowed to be. I think it's important to note, and the chief I know can answer any questions. We have a policy that, you know, we're not approaching individuals just because they are unhoused. There is another reason, and again, the chief can explain probably that in more detail if you have questions. So next slide, please. So what are the issues and concerns that we continue to wrestle with? So residents, employees, patrons may feel unsafe or uncomfortable. You know, we've had some of the reports that have come in when people are taking trash out to the dumpster enclosures and are surprised to find individuals sleeping there. You know, there's an accumulation of debris or trash or other things. That we have many of these individuals who will be in our parks throughout the day and that they're allowed to be there. We have no camping in our park, so at 10 o'clock, they are not allowed to be there. But up until that time, they can use our parks and be in our parks like any other resident in the city. That's one that, particularly in Broadmoor Park, that has become more prevalent over the last year. And we've had an increasing number of calls, questions, I think even police reports that have been taken there just because of kind of the unease and that people are feeling with some of that activity. Again, it may create issues with trash, unsightly debris, or conditions that may be unsanitary. One of the concerns is that as the numbers increase, they may become more visible. Concern for impacts to property values. What we often find is that there are others in the community who want to provide food or money or assistance. And so it's not uncommon for us to see, and some of the businesses last year would comment on the fact that there were regularly other vehicles that would come by and be providing food or assistance of some sort. We found in the last couple of years that many of these residents may be customers or patrons of our businesses. So we've had some instances where they were hesitant to trespass them from private property because they were also consumers or customers of the businesses. You all receive complaints from residents and business owners. We get complaints from residents and business owners. We get going back to the parks issue, we've had people who've had parks rentals who have called to report being, what's happening, or we felt kind of uncomfortable in this situation. You know, we have a longstanding commitment to treat all of our residents with dignity and respect. And so sometimes that translates into a perception that the city isn't doing anything. As we all know, this is not an issue that's an easy one to solve. But the current systems and structures that we have don't really provide meaningful support to balance all the needs. What we have seen is an increasing service demand, you know, on our police department, just in terms of responding. So next slide, please. So what is happening right now is what you may recall is on your Community Development Committee agenda, there is the agreement with KDOT for Metcalf Bridge repairs. And that included the following language taken from Article 3, number 3, that said removal of encroachments. And it requires us to initiate and proceed with diligence to remove or require the removal of all encroachments either on or above the limits of the right-of-way within its jurisdiction, as shown on final design plans for the project. And it is further agreed that all such encroachments will be removed before the project is advertised for letting. And that letting, you may recall from your agenda item, is scheduled to occur in January of 2026. What has been built, and an individual who is living there or off and on, we thought maybe that had been abandoned, but it appears in the last, week or so, Chief, that maybe he's back to living in that structure. Between the bridge work that is going to occur, and you may recall there was a stormwater sinkhole that appeared at the corner of the chiropractor's office. That project is out for bid. Bids will be opened a week from this Friday. And then, so those two things, in addition to the larger Johnson Drive reconstruction project, is going to make that area a pretty active construction zone over the next 12 plus months. That's not a safe place. Regardless of whether or not KDOT says we need to remove any encroachments, that's not a safe place to have someone living and existing. So we have started into conversations with that individual about the need to move from that location, and that will take some time. And the chief is working with our city attorney because that's our property. So we can't cite someone. I think we almost have to cite ourselves. So we're working through the legal processes and what notice is appropriate to provide and to assist with that. So our goal would be to facilitate that process, to come in and clean up that area, which will, I think, be pretty substantial. And then to look at coming through and clearing out some of the underbrush in that area, leaving some of the larger trees, but removing some of that in the hopes of creating a situation that maybe isn't as inviting in the future for folks to come in and do that. So that's sort of the immediate thing that's happening with our most visible and most frequently contacted unhoused resident of the city of Mission. I don't know where he will end up or where he will go. Again, I think we will continue to have contact and manage that, but that should alleviate at least some of the concerns of the business owners in that area. There's still the larger question of, where in our community do we feel comfortable, where is appropriate? Next slide. Well, oh, you're there. What will we continue to do? We offer access to services both through the police department and our mental health co-responder. And I don't believe to date we've had anyone who's taken advantage of any of the services that we've offered. Not an uncommon situation. Oftentimes, and we'll invite the folks from UCS back to talk about the point in time counts and, the various types of unhoused or unhoused populations. And so what we're seeing in Mission is the most difficult to change the course of that, because these are people who are choosing to be outside on the streets for a variety of different reasons. We have suggested that residents relocate to less visible areas. We've tried some of that. We've not had success. We will trespass individuals from private property if that's desired by the property owner. And that typically involves assisting with a physical move. Offering the community center, our community center historically serves as a warming or cooling center. And so that is certainly open to unhoused residents during those time periods, not year round, but whenever we are serving as a warming or cooling center. We've designated specific liaisons and contacts from the police department, really exploring what others are doing in the KC Metro and across the country. That's been a lot of the conversations recently. And then really just looking at, do we want to draft any additional ordinances or regulations should the council want to see us go in that direction? So where do we go from here? Continue to monitor, assist, and offer everyone services to those folks in our community. Do we want to create new ordinances or regulations? One of the things that we haven't done yet and we'll collect, we do know that one of our neighboring communities has some pretty strict language about camping both on public property, restricting it, as well as sleeping in cars. So we can kind of provide just at least a compilation of excerpts about what some of our neighboring communities are doing and how they're potentially addressing the issue. My sense, and I think the chief and I, we've been working on this, is that many of those ordinances in other communities don't necessarily align with the philosophy that we've heard from our governing body. So we want to be very thoughtful as we move those forward. But again, balancing the needs of those unhoused individuals, our residents, our businesses, our police department, other city resources that are allocated to that. So I'll be quiet and we can open it up for discussion, questions, conversation. Kind of what are our next steps?
Okay. Councilmember Craig.
Do we have any idea, or is it even in our posture to ask if he has family somewhere? Does the family know about the situation? Do we get into that or not?
I don't know.
We don't do it in every situation. We have with the people that we deal with the most, we have attempted to locate family and make contact. The person most frequently we contact has no living family members. And he's chosen to live this lifestyle, I believe, since 2006.
I know this sounds morbid, but I mean, what if he dies on our property? What do we do? What's our next step? Seriously.
I mean, we would handle it like we would handle any other unattended death. We'd investigate to make sure there's no issues with the crime, have the medical examiner attend and see what the coroner's office would find in an autopsy.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Vaughn.
I just have a question. There's this property right off of Metcalf. Is it empty? I mean, could we, in our community, allow a homeless shelter to be bought or built or occupied? Could we do that?
When you say we, who is the we in that instance?
It would be the
city?
county. It's the county's program, but is there a place that they could use here that's kind of, because it seems to me like that there's a deserted area up there on Metcalf. Is there, or am I just?
Where along Metcalf are you referring to?
It seems like it's a Sears building or
It's
it's
the
a-
former JCPenney Call Center building. If you drive past there in the past week, it's been demolished because there will be a multifamily project that was approved that will be built there. And they just
it's a what?
a multifamily, it's an apartment building right across the street from Broadmoor Park. So, the county's project at 95th and I-35 fell through. They're not at this point or since that time, they have not, to my knowledge, been pursuing a larger kind of shelter type project. I think my sense is that if there were an entity or, you know, any number of the homeless service providers. And part of the county's rationale in coming to cities and asking for contributions for the planning studies and the development of that service center was, there was a lot of this, whose responsibility is this? And the county didn't feel like it was entirely, even though they provide many of the core services that would serve these populations, that it wasn't exclusively their responsibility. And I think our governing body sort of felt like that's true. It's going to take an effort on all of our parts to do this. So I think we would stand ready to support that. We certainly are not equipped financially or from a human resource standpoint to begin to get into service delivery at any significant.
Is there a spot like that hotel, that abandoned hotel? Do we have anything like that here?
Not that anybody's expressed interest in. And I don't even know at this point who would be operating something like that. One of the things that we will continue to do, I know the chief had some conversations with some other local chiefs at a recent conference about working with faith-based communities. We've not engaged in a lot of those conversations. I don't have a great sense of what, if any of the churches in our community might be doing. We've been meeting and talking, and we'll continue to meet and talk with other service providers on both sides of the state line. What's working, what's not working. But nobody's solved the problem, right? Either here or anywhere else across the country entirely. So.
Councilmember Ryherd.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, Laura and I, we talked about this on Monday a little bit. I mean, just from a littering standpoint, which we know is illegal to do, this is quite a setup. I guess, you know, if this individual is kind of moving and the police are going in and kind of like cleaning it up, I guess my other concern is like, are there hazardous materials in these?
Well, the cleanup of this would not be our
Okay,
police
it
department.
would be like,
Yeah, we're gonna have to hire somebody to
Sure,
come in.
okay,
And
yeah.
take care of that.
I guess my concern is like hazardous materials, and I know we've talked about sanitary conditions, things like this, so it's also like on top of our police department receiving many calls about it, not just from business owners, but from also citizens. And then just like the nature of the clean, like the level that this would require. I mean, I hate, you know, we've talked about it, it's hard because this doesn't necessarily solve the problem. It punts it down to another city, another place, but it's also like, yeah, you can't, I don't know, I can't. This level is kind of just difficult.
Mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Well, I think part of the challenge that you have is, and this is kind of what we engage in some of the conversations is, individuals who are moving, maybe even moving each day or each night with all of the things that they have, present a different set of challenges. This individual had this set up, but then was also frequently taking a large amount of his things with him during the day or to the other places where he was camping or sleeping or living, for lack of a better term. And so how should we account for that, right? And then even going as far as if you're in our parks, you know, he wasn't generally leaving things behind, but it was a large amount of things that were coming to the park with him each day. Now, it will be interesting because in Broadmoor Park, the those restrooms are closed, and they were winterized this past week. So the restrooms are no longer accessible. So what we've seen in past years is the individuals who have kind of stayed in that area or been close to that area because of the restroom facilities will have a shift now until they reopen again in the spring.
Yes, Councilmember Loudon.
This is a situation that we've talked about many times, and it's so sad because we don't really have a lot of options in terms of where to house people. And as you said, there's numerous reasons why they don't necessarily want to go to a shelter. And I don't know that Mission is big enough or has the resources, as you say, to solve the homeless problem in our area. But I appreciate that we seem to be walking the line of not criminalizing being unhoused. And I appreciate that. And I hope that we will continue, although, it kind of ties our hands because then there's not a whole lot that the city is doing to fix this situation. But I just don't think that that's a fix. That's just moving someone from one place to another and then tying them to a system where they have to pay fines and, obviously that they can't do that. So I appreciate the humane approach that we have been taking, and I wish I had an answer.
I do too.
I would tell you.
Councilmember Crane.
Let me just give you a brief example. Broadmoor Park's at the end of my street. And I went up there to do a walk around one day, and a young woman with her baby was going through with the stroller, and he was under the cover and popped out. Scared the hell out of everybody. But he's moved within the park geographically. He used to be in a corner back by the baseball. Now he's up by the sidewalk. And it does present a problem for people who want to use the park for recreation. And, there's a safety issue at hand. There's so many things on so many fronts, and it doesn't solve it. But for young people to come through there and want to use our parks like they were intended to be, it's scary. Absolutely.
Well, and we've had to remind this particular individual that although public property, blocking an entire sidewalk is not an acceptable, practice. And so he will pick up his things and move and accommodate that. But it takes time as we kind of assist or monitor that, that move and that sort of thing.
Councilmember Carpenter Davis.
In addition, his proximity to the high school is worrisome too. I don't know if he's ever interacted with high school students, but oftentimes they're walking under that bridge and area. And it's a scary time for them too, so.
I think what it does is what we've discovered recently, it's not related to the unhoused issue, but I mean, that is a public parking area. It's going to stay a public, it will still be public once these construction projects are finished. But the businesses over there have reached out recently and because with concerns about just other cars that were there all day long, coming and going, people sleeping, what's happening. Turns out they're DoorDash drivers or some similar food service delivery, and that's a pretty convenient spot for them to wait till they get their next dispatch for a call. So we were able to communicate that with the business, and I think to a certain extent that helped alleviate just concern about why is this sometimes 3 or more vehicles parked over there all day long. But it's just, again, I think the world changes. We weren't on the lookout for we have DoorDash drivers in some of our own parking lots and other places. And so it's just, I think it's all of those things sort of come together that make it a little bit more challenging for, what are we going to do? We want this to be a safe place for everyone, welcoming and inviting. But does not come without its challenges.
I wanted to just jump in if I may. I think, first of all, I agree. I think the city services and city land are for the enjoyment of everybody, however they safely and legally see fit. And I want to keep it that way. I won't vote to criminalize existing on public land in any fashion. But I think there's a lot of room for dealing with issues that may come with that. If you are leaving a lot of trash and debris, we also have an obligation to the environment and everybody else who wants to use the land to keep it clean. So one of the things that does bug me is at what point does it rise to there's a habit, as kind of a structure that the person is inhabiting, and then there's basically trash around it. And I don't think we should let that go unchecked and let our land, be misused in that regard. So that's one thing I wanted to say. Another is, just as we think about this, especially this last slide, where do we go from here? I really want to keep in mind maybe a fourth option of what programs or assistance can we start to explore and figure out? Are there partnerships we can form, with our neighboring municipalities? Laura and you and I have spoken about a nonprofit in the Northland, and just those kinds of ideas start rattling around. But if we don't have the types of nonprofits and services that we might want to see in our area, can we be part of spurring those or just looking into spurring those? And the one thing I want to ask us to do, even if it is something that ultimately we figure out is impractical, I would like to hopefully take a genuine look at, can we provide any direct assistance to people? And in that, I mean, sort of interrogating when you say, are they staying outside by choice? Is that because the alternatives are shelters that place a number of unwanted conditions on their residency there? I mean, if a person, for example, was offered a home for free, do you think in most cases that they would take that, or is there more to it?
I think it depends on the situation.
Yeah.
The conversation that I had with the executive director of a Turning Point, which is a service agency north of the river. And I just happened to be a little bit more familiar. And they, a large part of their program is outreach and going to people who fall into this category of not really choosing kind of this lifestyle. And they will absolutely acknowledge that it takes a lot of time. One of the things that she shared with me was, one of their philosophies is our clients are allowed to choose the length of their runway to success. And sometimes that runway can be really, 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 really long. But also thinking about, how do you have the resources and provide the resources to, in many cases, unpack the underlying trauma that is causing someone to not be comfortable. So I'm choosing to live on the streets. Everybody else wants me to be in a home, in a shelter, in a home, in an apartment, in a hotel room. Until you resolve the issues as to why that's not comfortable or safe for that person, there's got to be a third solution. She gave an example. I think it's called Haven of Hope. It's a community, I believe she said, in San Antonio. And they built what sounds like the equivalent of kind of our veterans, small, tiny homes community. Beautiful. They just sort of rounded up unhoused and moved them in, and people didn't want to be there. And it was a lot of memories and trauma and other things, and I'm not doing that justice by any stretch, associated with that. So they then purchased several campers and parked them right outside of this area. And the same people who didn't want to be in the home, that more permanent structure, were comfortable living in a camper because it had a different connotation of
Recreation.
yeah. Or it was, whatever association that they had. Oftentimes she would say they see a lot of men whose spouses pass away and they lose their house, potentially in a foreclosure in that process. Just a variety of different things. But again, that's where we get into this whole idea of, how much time can we spend? Do we have the ability to spend to deal with that? But I think where it makes sense, or where we continue to do that or explore resources is worth it.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation, because I agree. I don't think it'll always be practical, or really ever be practical, for Mission alone to build the shelter to solve the problem. But I hope we never lose sight of just asking ourselves the question, can we do anything directly here to make the situation better? So, Councilmember Vaughn, yeah.
I just have a last comment that I do think that if you make the choice to be on the street, that is your choice. And whether we want to do something or not, we can't. That's their choice. However, I do think that if you're doing the trash or making, or making it not unsafe, like just your presence there making me feel unsafe, that's not my indigent problem.
Right.
It's your problem. But if you're doing trash and stuff like that, that's a whole different thing. And you've done what you can do. That's all we can do. And I think we just need to, I do think that we need to do some ordinances about trash and cleanliness and stuff like that. But if somebody chooses to live on the street, I think that is a choice. I mean, you've given them choices and that's what they continue to want to do. We just have to live with that. That's just my thinking.
Councilmember right here.
Yeah, I think kind of along what Ben said, like, I don't think any of us up here want to criminalize the in-house population, but I think the question is like, at what point do these kind of structures encroach on like our use of this public space and our enjoyment of it? Where that line is, how we,
It's a slippery slope.
yeah, how we determine that, I don't know. Again, we don't have the answers, I think, maybe to provide you, and maybe Leah does.
Yeah.
Because you are,
It's okay.
this is, I mean,
Got all the answers? Yeah.
this is your
Okay.
realm. Like,
Yeah,
this is-
I'm
yeah,
just
please.
sitting on the answer, but it's
Please.
about to come out. No, I don't. But one thing, I mean, if we're talking about trash and resources, I mean, would it be possible to just give this person a good supply of trash bags and pointing out the nearest receptacle where they could place that? I mean, because we can't solve the homeless crisis in Mission full cloth, but we could maybe help with little bits at a time of the things that are the most.
This is a whole
Discerning.
different level. And the executive director said, when we were talking about, I was explaining the situation, which because of the construction projects we're going to need. And she said, have you ever had to really do that? Because she said, you understand that's a whole nother level of trash and litter and mud and unsanitary conditions and all of those kinds of things. I think part of the challenge that we see is that what we perceive to be trash is likely not trash to that individual.
Understood.
Just part of their belongings, which is why if we had, do you want to speak to kind of why we can't just go pick up stuff, or if so for example, when we were setting up for Oktoberfest and they were doing the final walkthrough, they discovered that there was a cardboard box and maybe a blanket and some other things, backpacks that were kind of over on the market side that we hadn't been aware of. So if you, Chief, could address that a little bit.
So our policy would dictate that we don't remove that. And that when that was brought to my attention, we also have a city ordinance that says that when we recover property, we hold it for 45 days for redemption. And I can override our department policy because I sign off on them. And so I had them go ahead and remove that because because it wasn't it could create more of a disruption to an event being there. And is it abandoned? Is it not? I mean, so we didn't trash anything. We just took it in as recovered property. We'll hold on to it for 45 days before we discard it. And then that gives the person plenty of time. We have had no incidents at that site of any unhoused people. So we don't know. It could have been unhoused person that could have just been stuff that fell out of a truck. We don't know, but our policy is pretty, we do everything in our power to avoid doing anything criminal with the unhoused. And I think that's pretty much the first line of the policy is homelessness is not a crime.
We've started that.
Yeah.
It's going to be a long process.
Started that?
Yes.
He just takes a lot of nudging and reminders about things. So he takes when we need him to do something, he just takes a lot of nudging and reminders to eventually accomplish what we need him to do. No, it's just, when you've lived that lifestyle for so long, you have a significant amount of things that are important to you that you have to pick up, move, don't know where, all of those things. So, whether he probably spends some time trying to figure out where that next place might be able to be.
So that's why we kind of wanted to, I mean, we've been kind of working towards this, but that's why we really wanted to start this, not December 31st. And, give him that time because we recognize it's going to take some time to get that in.
Go ahead, Councilmember Crane.
Everything is visible. If we were really doing our due diligence and that's looking for a place for him, Streamway Park is away from everything. It's not near, but it has no sheltering, it has no restrooms. I mean, I think we're on a health level and a community service level. I think we're really trying to figure out something in his best interest that he may not be interested in. Yes.
He's
But
not
I mean,
interested. I mean, we know he's not interested in that. He wants to be in much closer proximity to Johnson Drive because he shops and eats and patronizes businesses along there.
Could we
Correct.
suggest that he move to the other end of Broadmoor Park and not in the center? I mean, that park is used a lot. People come down there and they use the park and it's just, it's a real balancing act on this one, I think.
Yep, it is. Okay, well.
No questions,
I
comments?
mean, I think, thank you for the discussion. Didn't expect to come out with a solution. If we did, we'd all be on tour. Yeah, we'd, around the country, right? We'd solving a lot of.
Yeah,
issues.
yeah. I mean, I think certainly I've heard from everybody that I think there is no desire to criminalize homelessness and that, but also we all have a right to use public land and let's make sure that we all can do that in as fair a fashion as we can.
Right.
Okay. I'm sure my next thing is department updates. Okay. But before we adjourn, are there any department updates for the
The only
afternoon?
thing I would say is congratulations to those who secured election yesterday. I just wanted to remind everyone that the transition will occur in December at our December city council meeting, which I believe is the 17th of December. So it's always a little tricky in an election transition year because the current council will sit at the committee meeting and we will certainly invite others to attend. And then, so any business that occurs on that meeting will then move to the legislative meeting in December, but we'll change, sort of have the changing of the guard at the outset of that meeting. And so we'll recognize both incoming and outgoing council members, but I just wanted to get that on everybody's radar because December agendas tend to be pretty hectic anyway. And we'll try to manage that to try to keep it to as many just housekeeping items as we can. And I will reach out to our incoming Ward 2 council person just to explain kind of that process as well. And that's all we have this evening.
Thanks, Laura. I just want to add on to that to commend those people that did have to go and campaign this cycle. That's uniquely challenging work, whether, winners or losers. That's I think commendable and difficult. And I had to do it 4 years ago, so I certainly understand. And thank you to everybody that ran and campaigned, and congratulations to the winners, of course. What's that?
I just said.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Happy with the outcome.
It's now it is now 8:44 p.m. and with no further discussion, that concludes the meeting of the Finance and Administration Committee. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, first of all, is there going to be a restaurant in the lanes? Because they're doing a lot of work in that restaurant area. Is that a restaurant going to go in there? Not the lanes, the
Is there anything going in?
the one on Johnson Drive, whatever it's called.
Locale.
Locale.
The locale, yes.
And yes, that space was vacant for the longest time. And they finally got a tenant in there, and it's a hair salon.
Oh, it's a hair salon?
So it's kind of high-end boutique hair salon where they'll have individual stalls that are rented out. You know, so hairstylists will be in there.
Oh, not a restaurant, huh?
No,
And then the second thing is that where the Lamar's Donuts, that's a beautiful, they've done a nice job. It's gorgeous right there.
yeah, I haven't been up there recently.
Oh, my gosh,
Well, I'm
it's
peeling it off.
beautiful.
A month or so ago, yeah.
That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Okay.
Is that we adjourn? Can I do that?
Yes, I have a business update for you if you would like it. So many of you are familiar with her friend Fiorella, who owns Fiorella's Boutique. She has long, almost since she moved into her space, said, I need more space. Well, the other day, her next door neighbor on the corner, Pro Reflexology, moved out. So she has taken over that lease, and she's hopeful to have her new space set up and ready to go by Black Friday. So look for that exciting new space.
When does Fluffy Fresh reopen as their new?
Well, they have a sign on the door that says November 5th, but I haven't found anyone in City Hall who has any contact information for us to try and validate that or get some business licensing going on. So I think they were working on some HVAC in the building. Oh.
So, they've changed ownership.
Right.
So he had some health issues, and so he sold to somebody else. They have applied for a business improvement grant to the community development department to install an HVAC system.
Mm.
Apparently there's no
Can you
air
imagine?
conditioning in the building.
Standing over a fryer in 95 degrees.
Yeah, so they're in the process of doing that right now. I think once that's done, then it'll open. So. Yeah, I think he's,
He had some.
yeah.
He advised that continuing with the business operations would not be healthy for him, but he is alive and well.
Yeah, I think he's got helping them transition, so I completely walked away from it.
Okay. Let's call it there. Let the record reflect 8:47.